United Nations recognized the crucial role of women in ensuring peace and security 22 years ago, when it adopted Resolution 1325. The UN affirms the important role of women in conflict prevention and resolution, peace negotiations, peace building and peacekeeping, humanitarian response and post-conflict recovery, and stresses the importance of their equal participation and full involvement in all efforts to maintain and consolidate peace and security. And while some people may be offended by the intentional emphasis on the role of women, the UN had reasons for this, if only because there's a correlation between global security and the influence of women on foreign policy. Data shows that the level of gender equality is a highly indicative factor in the assessment of the peacefulness of states. And vice versa, the larger the gender equality gap, the more likely a state is to resort to violence in its initial response to conflict, and the more involved it will be in conflicts, both within the country and with other countries. We live in times of crisis. The Russian invasion of Ukraine has created significant reasons for Europeans, but also people from all other continents, to be in extreme worry about their own security and the future. Also dramatic examples of the oppression of women in Afghanistan after the Taliban took power, as well as the desperate struggle of Iranian women against the misogynistic regime, do not leave the headlines, whilst perhaps not nearly as much as they actually would deserve. Visionaries of feminism and gender equality see something in common in these tragedies. They could have been avoided in the future, including by applying a gender approach to foreign policy. The so-called feminist foreign policy is a special way of finding solutions to the challenges of our time, focusing on issues of peace, gender equality, integrity of the environment and human rights. Feminist foreign policy changes colonial, racist, patriarchal and male-dominated power structures. And most importantly, it seeks and finds significant resources to implement this mission. So, what kind of leadership makes our world more democratic and promotes stable and peaceful development? My name is Gregor Razumovsky, and today I will tell you a little more about those whose activities have become the embodiment of the principles of feminist foreign policy. Sweden is one of the most feminist countries in the world and a regular leader in gender equality indicators in the areas of employment, rights, and well-being. Many Swedish female citizens identify themselves as feminists, and male citizens share the principles of feminism as basic. Not surprisingly, it was the Swedish government that became the innovator who initiated the trend towards feminist foreign policy, the so-called FFP. In 2014, as a logical extension of her beliefs, Swedish Foreign Minister Margot Wallström implemented a gender approach to international relations, causing tectonic shifts in world policy standards. The current Swedish Foreign Minister, Ann Linde, successfully follows the principles of the FFP. The Swedish definition of FFP involves finding answers to questions about the three basic rights: representation, resources. Do women and girls have the same rights as men and boys? Are women represented at all levels of government? Are adequate resources being used to solve the problem of unequal rights? Having held ministerial positions for many years, Ann Linde has implemented the principles of the 3R during her work in the UN Security Council and the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, and the Swedish presidency in the OSCE. The official claims that the feminist lens really transforms the vision of the world. And this is especially noticeable in conflict zones. Her appearance became a sensation in the history of British intelligence. For the first time, a woman headed one of the largest special services. The UK Government Communications Centre, GCHQ, is charged with protecting the British government from cyber attacks, terrorism and malicious actions by foreign states and organizations. Last year alone, GCHQ has provided vital information to shape the West's response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine, has helped disrupt terrorist conspiracies, and has tirelessly countered threats from ransomware that cost the UK dearly. Now it's all run by Keast-Butler, a mother of three and Oxford graduate. Keast-Butler previously worked as Deputy General Director for Strategy for the British Intelligence Service MI5. In this position, she was responsible for the full range of MI5 operations, including the tracking by British intelligence officers and responding to Russia's preparations for a large-scale invasion of Ukraine. Anne Keast-Butler became the 17th director of the GCHQ in more than 100 years of the service's existence, and the first woman in this position. The appointment of Anne Keast-Butler was one of the most inspiring examples of gender-based approaches to forming the composition of decision-making centers in one of the most closed areas, national security. Special Agent Yulia Laputina started her career in the security service of Ukraine in 1992. Then her position was called the Security Officer of the Counterintelligence Unit. In early 2014, after the invasion of Russian troops in Ukraine, Laputina, as part of the first joint group of the SSU, landed at the Kramatorsk airfield in eastern Ukraine. Once in the city occupied by Russian troops, Laputina established contacts with pro-Ukrainian activists and conducted intelligence activities, collected and transmitted information to Kyiv. She organized pro-Ukrainian actions in the temporarily occupied territory, bringing the deoccupation of the city closer. In September to December 2014, Laputina was the commander of the SSU task force and performed tasks to detain members of Russian terrorist groups. On March 25, 2020, Laputina was awarded the rank of Major General. She became the second female general in the history of independent Ukraine. Sanna Marin, at 34, became the youngest female head of government in the world. Marin was born in Helsinki and her parents divorced when she was still very young. Marin was raised by her mother and partner. After high school, Marin worked in a bakery and as a cashier, but decided to join the youth wing of the Social Democratic Party. And in 2006, she ran unsuccessfully for Tampere City Council, and in 2012, on a second attempt, she was elected. The following year, Marin became chairman of the council, and in 2015, she was elected to the Finnish parliament. Marin soon became deputy chairman of the Social Democrats and was appointed Minister of Transport and Communications in the new government of Social Democrat leader Antti Rinne. After Rinne resigned, Marin replaced him as Prime Minister. So Marin became the youngest Prime Minister on the planet. Marin was considered one of the most left-wing members of the party. Voters admired her clear thinking and focus on politics. Her program was focused on strengthening the Finnish social security program, as well as issues of social equality and climate change. Marin managed to cope with the global crisis of COVID-19. Finland achieved a low infection rate and was able to quickly resume economic development. The full-scale war launched by Russia has created another challenge for Marin. While the entire European continent was trying to recover from the existential crisis, Marin led Finland into NATO. Despite the obstruction by members of the alliance favoring appeasement and the traditional Finnish non-alignment principles, Marin managed to achieve results this time again. But Sanna Marin lost the parliamentary elections. Videos of Sanna Marin having fun in a nightclub and at a party with friends were extensively spread through Finnish social media, and the accompanying scathing texts caused rather displaced discussion in Finnish society. Marin's critics called her behavior unworthy of the Prime Minister and did not take time to think about why the Russian government was so keen on discrediting the Finnish Prime Minister. Although Marin apologized and supporters called the allegation sexist, and women across Finland expressed solidarity with Marin by posting videos of themselves dancing, this time public opinion swayed towards conservatism. Support for the Social Democrats declined, but Marin is still popular among many Finns and people around the world. In 2019, for the first time in the years of the European Commission's existence, the institution came to be headed by a woman. After some debate, the responsible actors agreed on Ursula von der Leyen. Federal Chancellor Angela Merkel emphasized the role of a former Minister of Defense in easing the refugee crisis in Europe and promoting the creation of a multinational military group in Lithuania, strengthening the presence of NATO in the region. Von der Leyen was born in Brussels in 1958. Her father, Ernst Albrecht, was Prime Minister of the federal state of Lower Saxony for 16 years. Her mother worked as a journalist, but after the birth of 7 children, she decided to give up her job. Ursula grew up surrounded by 5 brothers. Younger sister Benita Eva died at the age of 11. She studied economics at the London School of Economy and Medicine in Hanover. She worked as a gynecologist and taught at the Higher School of Medicine, where she earned a master's degree in public health. Von der Leyen started her political career relatively late. At 45, she was elected for the first time, initially, to the Parliament of Lower Saxony. Angela Merkel saw the potential of von der Leyen and appointed her head of the Ministry of Family. The new minister quickly became a national star by increasing the number of kindergartens and introducing paid parental leave for men. She did not follow the traditionally conservative party lines of the CDU. Sure enough, party members accused Ursula of undermining traditional family values. In 2009, von der Leyen became Minister of Labour. She gave lodging to a Syrian asylum seeker in her home and called for reducing barriers for foreigners who want to work in Germany. She also lobbied for the introduction of gender quotas in the boards of directors of enterprises. In 2013, Ursula von der Leyen became the first woman to head the German Ministry of Defense. One of her first initiatives was to create kindergartens for military children to make the army attractive for young families. Von der Leyen lobbied for an increase in Germany's military budget. She worked to expand the cyber capabilities of the Bundeswehr, initiated changes to motivate women to build a military career. Ursula von der Leyen has her own idea of leadership. You don't need to pump up with testosterone to be successful in politics. When you're young, you can be impressed by such powerful rituals as raising the voice or knocking on the table. Over the years, you realize this is just a meaningless hype. Von der Leyen is convinced that women's leadership style is the style that should be expected by men as much as by women. I'm sure that men also become victims of stereotypes, that leadership requires rigidity and brutality. I've been very successful in politics for many years without shouting or rumble. Von der Leyen contends that at the beginning of her career, she often had to face sexism. She was sometimes called Supermom because she had 7 children, but then criticized. Why does she have 7 children, but she's never home? No need to explain how to do everything with your 7 children, husband and home in Hanover, says von der Leyen. Journalists ask such questions because they believe that women with children cannot seek to hold influential positions. In Germany, it is traditionally considered that senior positions demand complete self-sacrifice. In most cases, this is complete nonsense, said von der Leyen. This is the power of reason. Always remember that our true power lies in rational thought and a clear mind, when we're threatened with the daily flow of disinformation and the manipulation of news. So please do the reasonable thing and start following our project right now.